All right, good. So thank you, Andy, for the first part. Thank you for making this job of interim director. So for those who don't know me, I am Jean-Gabriel Cuby. I am currently from Laboratoire Astrophysique de Marseille, and I will have the great honor and privilege of being the next executive director of CFHT for the next 5 years. Having done nothing, the only thing I can tell you is what I presented to the staff during the application process and what I discussed with the board during the interviews. So there are essentially 3 pillars of what I said I will do. There is no sense of priority. The first is fostering a culture of understanding and reconciliation with the native Hawaiian community. So these are verbatim the words that were in the call for the position. So this is wording from the board, I presume, which I find perfectly appropriate. The second is preparing MSc for construction, and the third is running CFHT as a running observatory. So how do I yeah. Okay, thanks. So the first point about the relation with the native Hawaiian community. I'm sure that all of you know that there is a situation in Hawaii at the moment around astronomy on Mauna Kea. Maybe the youngest of you don't know the history of this situation, but the situation is very serious, and I think that we have to face it head on, and we need to acknowledge it. In particular, we need to acknowledge the reverence and importance that the summit of Mauna Kea holds with the Hawaiian community. Mauna Kea is not any mountain where astronomers came and put telescopes on top of it. This is an iconic mountain. It is the tallest mountain of the Pacific, and it has a very, very high and strong significance for the Hawaiian community. So I think that we need to acknowledge that very clearly and without hesitation. We also need to acknowledge the ramifications of land use by astronomical facilities at the summit. So the way I see it is that it's a two-way awareness process. I've listed here 3 lines of actions, but there may be more. First of all, we need to continue cultivating CFHT community connections. This is the title of Maribeth's talk that she will give just after Daniel's talk. Clearly, CFHT has been doing extremely well thanks to the staff in particular over the years to reach out to the community, and needless to say that this needs to be continued. But what we also need to do is to inform the CFHT astronomical community, you, us, about the Hawaiian culture and history. For that, we will develop educational materials with the community, with academics and professionals. And I also think that we should reach out and work with the astronomical societies so that again, this particular situation of astronomy on Mauna Kea is acknowledged very clearly from us, from our profession. This is a slide that I presented when I made my presentation to the staff and to the board. Haven't changed it. I put it back here just as an example of things that I would like to see whenever you present results from CFHT, scientific results from CFHT data or present anything related to CFHT. I think that it would be fair to start with an acknowledgement and not necessarily a very short acknowledgement. I think you could take certainly a couple of minutes out of your talk to again to acknowledge the relevance and significance of Mauna Kea for the native Hawaiian population, and express the fact that we are privileged and honored to have the chance and opportunity to observe the sky and to advance our knowledge of the universe with the facilities hosted on the mountain. So this is, again, an example. We will provide material for everyone to hopefully to do this when you present again a talk on CFHT or using CFHT data. All right, so the second point is MSc, preparing MSc for construction. So Andy has introduced the subject. I don't have very much to say here. We will discuss after tomorrow during this session. As Andy has mentioned, there will be presentations on MSc by Jennifer and by Sam Barden. Basically, what I want to say here is that we need to decouple construction phase from what remains to be done for the study phase. In other words, what I'm proposing is that we use the next 2 years to advance alternative concept designs, which is exactly what Andy has presented and that what Sam Barden will present on Wednesday. We should perform trade-off studies, both in terms of engineering and science. We will also prepare for the Pathfinder, depending on funding opportunities, and certainly the science team will be solicited for that. The bottom line being that we definitely need to strengthen the project office, to reinforce the project office for these design phases. But we need to do that basically with the current partners, the current CFHT and MSc partners. So we will solicit, you will solicit the community to help us, including through sponsored positions to reinforce the project. For what concerns the construction, obviously we need visibility and confidence in the process of the master lease renewal. So that is why I think that we should separate the design phase and the construction phase until we have a clear view on what's going to happen on Mauna Kea. It will be very difficult to attract partners for constructing an astronomical facility. Europe and Australia have access to multi-object spectroscopic facilities at ESO, and there is also the prospect of developing an MSc-like instrument or facility at ESO. So clearly the roles of Canada and the US are and will be paramount, different from the interests of Europe and Australia. I'm not saying that Europe and Australia will not have interest, but the interest will certainly be different. And of course, we need to seek to investigate the interests from Asian partners and from the rest of the world. And last but not least, we should also investigate the possibilities of support from private foundations. All right, and the last slide, running CFHT. So there is this ongoing call for large programs. I presume that we will soon know the outcome of this call. And these large programs will run until 2024A. So we will need to prepare what will come next. I assume that we will again launch new calls for large programs in a form that will need to be determined and discussed with SAC and with the board. Whether we want a different format for these large programs, we will see. reducing the number of instruments is clearly on the table, but it is subject to the interest of associated partners. If we want to attract other associated partners, but in the meantime, reduce or decommission the instruments that these partners are interested in, then of course this won't work. So while the subject is on the table, I don't think that we can commit to anything at the moment. Obviously, we'll need to seek new associated partners and again, seek increased support from the CFH community. And last but not least, social subjects, social questions are becoming more prominent every day in our life, but also in our professional life, such as EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion, climate change, and of course, the subject of the relationship with the Hawaiian community. So clearly, these questions, which are already addressed by CFHT, but clearly we'll need and we'll certainly try to address them face on. What I want to mention here is that, in my opinion, everything is intertwined, because for MSc, for instance, we will certainly need to demonstrate that we have done a lot of efforts in terms of diversity, including offering jobs for the native populations. And we will also presumably need to demonstrate that MSc is, if not green, at least that we have evaluated its carbon footprint and that we have made everything possible to minimize it. So everything is intertwined. And with that,
So we're running a little late. So except if there's a really, really pressing question, I suggest we shift the questions to the final quarter of an hour discussion session at the end. So you also have time to think about it and post it online if you want. And there's also a longer discussion on the third day after the MSc presentation where we can discuss MSc a little bit more. So thank you, Jean-Gabriel and Andy before you. And we're going to have Danielle telling us about science operation, about current science at CFHT.